So welcome everybody to this latest video on 160 Maths, and in this video we'll be preparing for the AQA GCSE Maths exam of 2022, looking at higher paper 1 revision over some statistics and probability questions. Now there will be a copy of the question sheet in the description below, and I recommend that you have a go at these questions before watching this video and going through the answers. So again, before we get started on having go some practice questions relating to these topics, let's just have a quick outline over what's included in these topics. Now, obviously the questions I've selected don't go over every single aspect of each of these topics, so it is really important that you do revise these topics fully and practice other questions, as well as the exam past questions that we're going to go through. So in terms of cumulative frequency, I would say the key things that you need to be able to do is be able to plot, find interquartile ranges and find the medians. You then want to be able to compare two box plots and then be able to read information, info relating to less or more than values. Now, when it comes to, and maybe you may have to read to go backwards, so work backwards from a CF diagram to a table. Now, when it comes to Venn diagrams, with Venn diagrams you want to be able to know how to complete a Venn diagram based on some information. You want to be able to read probabilities from a Venn diagram. And we also want to be able to look at notation. Now, from a tree diagram, that's just, again, that's quite self-explanatory. So from a tree diagram, you want to be able to construct a tree diagram and also be able to use one to find or calculate probabilities. And then expected values. Now this is related to relative frequency, and that's basically what that is. And independent events is very connected to, so basically independent events are events where one event is not impacted by another, so it's be able to explain an independent event. You also want to be able to calculate probabilities and sample space diagrams, etc. So let's get started onto some questions. Now I'll try and zoom in just so you can see. Now again, a reminder that a copy of these questions is in the description below for you to download and have an attempt at before watching this video and going through the answers. So this first question, it says that type A batteries and type B batteries were tested. A cumulative frequency diagram shows information about the battery life of type A. And the question is asking us to estimate the interquartile range of type A. Now here we can see that the maximum frequency is 80, so to find the median that's going to be halfway, which is at 40. So the interquartile range is basically the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. So you think to yourself, which is between 40 and 80? That's going to be 60. So my upper quartile, which is this line here, is at 80, and I would say that my upper quartile reaching down, and again it's really important that you do mark this on your cumulative frequency diagram, is 1400. And then my lower quartile, which is the value between your median and the lowest value, is going to be at 20. And with this graph being nice and nicely worked out, we can work out our lower quartile is 1100. So our interquartile range is going to be the upper quartile minus the lower quartile, which gives us an answer of 300. It then says estimate the number of type A batteries that had a battery life of more than 1600. So for this, what I need to do is find 1600, and I plot up just like so. And then as soon as it hits the cumulative frequency graph, I then want to go across. Now remember that the cumulative values are that number or less, so this number here of 76, so 76 were 1600 hours or less. So in the question of B, it says how many were more than 1600? Well, that's going to be 80 minus how many were less. So that's going to give me an answer of 4. Part C then says that the box plot shows information about battery life of B, and it says on average which type has a greater battery life, and it says tick the box. Now for this one, comparing the medians is going to be type B, and the reason for this is because on average type B will last longer as the median for B equals 1300 and the median for A, and if I just go up to A to find out where the median was, so the median is at 40, so I go up to 40, as soon as it hits the curve, project downwards, and I make that out to be 1260. So I can just write 1260 there. So you can see it's got a high median, and I don't know what I'm doing there. Let's write that a little bit neater. And it is 1260. And that should be enough for the 2 marks. Then moving on to question 2, it says here is some information about marks of 60 students in a test, and we've got data, and it says draw a cumulative frequency diagram. So for this, I need to set up my CF column, and then all I'm going to do is just add a running total. So I've got 9 plus 16, which is 25. 25 plus 20 is 45, then 53, and then the final amount is, of course, going to be 60. And then from this, what I then need to plot. Now, when you're plotting it, remember that with cumulative frequency values, you always want to plot at the upper limit. And again, the reason why is because we're counting how much is less than that upper limit. So then plotting this, let me just zoom out so I can see the table and the graph in the same screen. Hopefully it doesn't show me out. Let me just go down a little bit more, if I can. There we go. So looking at these values, I've got a plot at 50, it's at 9. So again, just trying to be as accurate as you can. And then at 60, it is at 25. At 70, it is at 45, which is going to be there. And at 80, it's at 53. 80, 53, and at 90 it is at 60, which is there. And then what I then want to do, and again 40 is at 0. So here what I then want to do is to make sure that I'm joining the points up. Now if it did say cumulative frequency polygon, then I'd be joining the points up with straight lines, but as this is, it doesn't mention the word polygon, what I need to do is just try and accurately and the best of my ability to try and join those points up with a smooth curve like so. That's not blessed, but we'll make do. Next question then says use your graph to estimate the lowest mark of the top 20% of students. Now here, what we're looking at here is, so 60 times 0.8 gives me 48. So I'm looking for the 48th place. So 48th person, which is here, let's use a different color, which is there. So that is my top 20% line. So if anyone who falls in the top 20%, it's going to be above that dashed line. And as soon as it hits the curve, I'm then going to project downwards. It's about there. And I should be using a ruler. My eyes are compensating. Well, that's definitely not straight there. But I make out it to be around about 70, 74, I would say. But again, you'd have a bit of leeway in terms of what it is. But as long as you've gone from your graph, that should be fine. So I'll say the 74 mark would get you in the top 20%. Then question 3, it says here is some information about miles per gallon of 60 cars. And again, what we want to do is we want to draw a cumulative diagram. So first thing I need to do is set up my CF column. And then again, just working out the values in the same way. So adding up the running total. So I've got 22, I've got 50, and I've got 60. And then just need to plot them in my graph. So plotting 50 at 6, 60 at 22, 70 at 50, and 80 at 60. So here at 40 we're at 0, 50 we're at 6, which is there. At 60 we're at 22, at 70 we're at 50, and at 80 we are at 60. And again, then what I'll do is join those points up with a curve like so. The next question then says use the graph to work out the interquartile range. So again, what I'm doing here is find the median, which is here halfway, so that's the median. So in between 0 and the median, that's 15, so I'm looking at this here, and I reckon that to my graph that the lower quartile is roughly around about 57, I make out. And the the upper quartile, which is going to be at 45, which is there, and I make out that to be around about 68. So then my interquartile range is those two numbers take away from each other, which gives me an answer of 11. Now again, yours might be slightly different. Obviously your graph is going to be, I'm hoping will be a lot more neater and a lot more accurate than mine. So as long as you're writing down and marking the lines on your graph, they should accept your answers as correct. Then moving on to question 4, it says there are 165 passengers on a plane. 3 of the passengers in business class are flying for the first time. In total, there are 15 passengers in business class. A quarter of the passengers not in business class are flying for the first time in the Venn diagram, and then we just need to complete it. So first things first, we know that there are 3 passengers flying business class are flying for the first time, so that's both. So this is going to be 3. Then for step 2, what we then need to do is we know that there are a total of 12 passengers in business class. So this B circle needs to add up to 15. So 3 are there, 12 are going to be there. Now in terms of not flying business, well, not flying business, well, that's going to be 135 minus the 15, so that's 120. Now it says that a quarter of those not flying business are flying for the first time, so a quarter of 120, and that's going to be 30 are not flying, flying for the first time. So there, that means there's going to be 30, and then from this are flying first time rather. So from this, to work out the values that are left, I'm going to do 135 minus 12 minus 3 minus 30, which gives me an answer of 67. And there I've completed my Venn diagram. Then with question B, it says one of the passengers is chosen at random. Work out the probability that the passenger is in business class. Well, how many business class are flying? Well, there's 15 out of a total of 135. And then if I then simplify that fraction, I get 1/9. So my final answer is 1/9. Then moving on to question 5, it says which of these represents the shaded region? Well, that's going to be A and B. So that is our third option. The next question, question 6, so we've got another Venn diagram, and it says that we've got 29 students in total. It says students chosen at random, circle the probability that a student owns a cat or a dog, but not both. So for this, I need to add up these two numbers. So 5 plus 7 is 12, and it's going to be over the total, so I'm going to be circling 12 over 29. Then says that a student who owns a dog, so we're just looking at that D circle, and we want to work out the probability that they also own a cat. So that's going to be 8 out of 15. So that is our second option. Moving on to question 7, it says which of these represents the shaded area? And that's going to be A or not B. So that there is our third option. Then moving on to question 8, so it says the Venn diagram shows information about 150 students. C represents the students studying chemistry, and P represents the number of students studying physics. The probability that physics students chosen at random also studies chemistry is 5/12. One of the 150 students is chosen at random. Work out the probability that they don't study either chemistry or physics. So for this, what we need to do is, in other words, is work out why. So using the first bit of information that we know that the probability of a physics student also is choosing chemistry. So we're looking at this circle here. That is going to be, well, the total of people studying physics is X plus 35. And the number of students that also studies chemistry that studies physics is X. And we've been told that that is equal to 5/12. Now from this, you should be able to notice that this is an algebraic fraction. So what we need to do is to find the value of X. So we cross multiply. So I've got 12X equals 5X plus 35. And then so 12x equals 5x plus, and 35 times 5, so let's just quickly do that without cheating, so it's 175. And so then we've got 12 take away 5x, which is 7x equals 175, so x equals 25. Now that we know that x equals 25, I can then work out y. So work out y by doing 150 minus 47 minus 25 minus 35 equals y. So y equals, and that's going to be a total of 47. So that means then the probability of selecting y is going to be 47 over the total of 150, and there is my final answer. Then for question 9, it says A and B are two events. Some probabilities are shown in the Venn diagram, and it says work out the probability of not A and B. Now, one way of doing this is to highlight, as we're looking at OR, is highlight these two events separately. So not A is all of this yellow bit. And so that's that bit. And B is all of this bit. Now, because I want OR, I want all the bits that are shaded. So if I just add up the shaded bits, I get 0.15 plus 0.35. And obviously looking at the remainder, which I don't think there is any. Yes, there is going to be. So if I just work that out, so I've got 0.3 plus 0.15 plus 0.35. And that gives me, so it's 0.2 outside. And so if I add that as well, and adding all of those numbers up, what do I get? Well, I'm going to get 0.7. Another alternative I could have done is just worked out what I don't want. So 0.3, take away from 1, gives me 0.7. So that would have been an alternate way of doing it. Moving on to question 10. So here we're looking at probability trees. So it says a fair spinner has 5 equal sections, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A fair die has 5 red faces and 1 green face. The spinner is spun, and if the spinner shows an even number, the dice is thrown, and it says complete the tree diagram with the spinner. So the probability of getting an even number from the spinner, well, there's 2 out of 5, so it's going to be 2 out of 5. So that means the probability of it being odd is 3 out of 5. Now, if you get an even number, we then roll the die, and that's either red or green, and the probability of getting a red is 5 out of 6, and the green is 1 out of 6. Now again, if you've got an odd number, I don't need to finish it, so that is there. Part B then says work out the probability of getting an even number and a green, colour green on the die. So it's the probability of getting an even number, which is 2 out of 5, multiplied, because that's what and means, green, which is 1 out of 6. So that's 2 out of 30, which is 1 over 15. And there is the final answer. Then moving on to question 11. It says that there are 11 pens in a box, 8 are black, 3 are red. 2 pens are taken at random without replacement. Work out the probability that the 2 pens are the same colour. So let's draw a tree diagram. So our first one is black and red. And so here we've got 8 out of 11, and we've got 3 out of 11. And then we've got black or red again. Now here we've got 1 out in the second pick, we've got 1 less pen, so that's 10, that's 10, that's 10. Oh, don't know why I've put 110, so let's get rid of that. And that's over 10. Now if I select a black one first, that means I've got 1 less black one, but I've still got all 3 red. And if I've selected a red one first, I've still got all 8 black ones, but I've got 1 less red. Now the probability of being the same colour, well, it's either going to be the probability of BB or the probability of being red. So probability of being black is 8 over 11 times 7 over 10. All means plus, and then red is 3 over 11 times 2 over 10. And if I work that out, I get 56 over 110 plus 6 over 110, and that equals 62 over 110, which simplifies to give me an answer of 31 over 55. Then moving over to question 12, it says 2 ordinary fair die are rolled. It says complete the tree diagram. So if it's 1/3, then this is going to be 2/3. This is going to be 2/3. That's 1/3, and that's 2/3. It then says work out the probability that both dice land on a number less than 3. So I'm looking at 1/3. That's for the first one, and then the second one is 1/3, and working that out gives me 1/9. Then moving on to C, it says work out the probability that exactly one of the die lands on number less than 3. So if the first die is either going to land on a 3, so it's either going to be 1/3 times 2/3, or I could have the first die being not greater than 3, but the first die being less than 3. So it's going to be 2/9 plus 2/9, which gives me an answer of 4/9. Then moving over to question 13, it says that an arrow on this spinner is equally likely to land on each section. The arrow is spun 72 times, so this is relative frequency. How many times would you expect it to land on a 4? Well, the probability of it being a 4 is going to be 2/6, which is 1/3. So then to work out the probability, it's going to be 1/3 times 72, or 72 divided by 3, and that gives me an answer of 24. So moving on to B, it says an arrow of a different spinner is spun 250 times. Some of the results are shown below. So the relative frequency of landing on a 4 is the same as the relative frequency of landing on a 5. Work out the relative frequency of landing on a 4. So if they're both the same, this is going to be X and this is going to be X. And so what I've got is I've got that 2X plus 25 plus 53 plus 62 all add up to 250. So if I then work out all of this, so 25 plus 53 plus 62, that comes up to 2x plus 140 equals 250. So 2x equals 110, so x equals 55. So then each of these numbers are 55. So what's the relative frequency of landing on a 4? Well, it's going to be 55 over 250, which simplifies to give me 11/50. Then moving over to question 14, it says the bag has only red, white, blue and yellow counters. A counter is taken from the bag at random. The probability of taking a white counter is twice the probability of taking a yellow counter. We need to complete the table. So if the yellow counter is X, then white is going to be double, so we're going to call that 2X. Now all of those probabilities need to all add up to 1. So 3X plus 0.4 equals 1. So 3X equals 0.6. So X equals 0.2. So what I can then do is this is then therefore going to be 0.2 and this is going to be 0.4. So then completing the table, well, that's what I've done. It then says that there are 500 counters in the bag and we need to complete the table. So for the white, what we need to do is multiply the probability by the amount. So it's going to be 0.4 times 500, which in other words is 40% of 500, and that gives me 200. For the blue, that's going to be 0.3 times 500, so that's just 30% of 500. Well, 10% is 50, and 30% is going to be 150. And the yellow is 20% of 500, so 10% is 50, 20% is going to be 100. It then says all of the yellow counters are taken out the bag. Work out the probability of selecting a red one. Well, how many red are going to be there? Well, that's going to be 50. And how many counters are there all together? Well, I've taken away 100, so that means it's going to be 400 left. And then simplifying that fraction gives me 1/8. Then moving over to question 15, it says that sweets come in 4 flavours, and lime, orange, melon and cherry. Work out the probability that a sweet is cherry flavour. So all I need to do is do 1 take away 0.2 plus 0.15 plus 0.3. And if I do that calculation, I get 0.65, leaving me with just 0.35. And then finally, for B, it says 200 sweets are there altogether. What's the probability of selecting? How many orange flavour are there? Well, it's going to be 0.15 times 200, which is the same as 15% of 200. And that gives me a total of 30. Then moving over to question 16. So again, we've got bag A has 2 black counters and 3 white counters. Bag B has 3 orange counters and 4 green counters. And the question is asking me to complete the Venn diagram. So if this first branch is 2/5, then that's going to be 3/5, and that's going to be 4/7, 3/7, and 4/7. It then says, what's the probability of choosing a black counter and an orange counter? Well, the probability of selecting a black counter is 2/5, and means multiplying orange counter is going to be 3/7, so it's going to be 6/35. And then moving over to question 17, it says that a school has 400 boys and 500 girls. The probability a boy is vegetarian is 0.1. Probability that a girl is vegetarian is 0.2. Estimate the total number of vegetarians. Well, from the boys, that's going to be 400 times 0.1, which is 10%, so that's 40. And then for the girls, it's going to be 500 times 0.2, which is 20% of 500, which is 100. So add up those two numbers and we get 140. It says that there are 10 prefects at the school. 4 of the prefects are vegetarian. 2 of the prefects are chosen at random to have lunch with a visitor. Show that the probability that they both are vegetarian is 2/15. Well, the chances of selecting a prefect that is vegetarian is going to be 4 out of 10. Then the probability of the next one, well, there's only 3 left out of 9. So that's going to be 12/90. And if I then simplify that, I get 2/15, which is what they wanted me to show. Then moving on to question 18, it says that a bag only contains black and white counters. The counter is chosen from the bag and replaced, so it's put back in. Then another counter is chosen at the bag at random. The probability of choosing 2 black counters is 0.36. Show that the probability of choosing a black counter each time is 0.6. Well, from this, we've got x times x equals 0.36. So x squared equals 0.36. So x equals the square root of 0.36. So x equals 0.6. And there is that answer. It then says work out the probability of choosing 2 white counters. Well, if the probability of picking black is 0.6, the probability of picking white is going to be 1 minus 0.6, which is 0.4. So picking 2 white counters is going to be 0.4 times 0.4, which gives me an answer of 0.16. It then says work out the probability of choosing at least 1 white counter. Well, that's going to be 1 take away the probability of choosing 2 black counters. So that's going to be 1 minus 0.36, which gives me an answer of 0.64. And there is my final answer. Now, if you did go another route of working that out, we still get the answer of 0.64, then that is absolutely fine. What I've done on the screen is probably the most efficient way of working it out and still getting 2 marks.